new DCU movies coming out this year, as well as all the talk of The Batman, I thought, hey, why not rank all 11 theatrically released Batman movies? Now, when I go into this, I gotta say, there's an enormous number of animated Batman movies that went straight to video. And some of them even got like a Fathom event release, like The Killing Joke or Return of the Caped Crusader last year. But I didn't include those in there. These are just the ones with a proper theatrical release. And some of those ones that went straight to video are better than some of the ones on this list, but I had to make a cutoff somewhere to have a proper list. This is gonna be my ranking of all 11 of those worst to best. Now, before I go into my list, how about you throw your list down in the comment section? And since you don't have to talk about them and edit the video, go ahead and throw in some of your favorite straight to video ones. I'd love to hear what they are. I have seen most of them. Would love to hear your thoughts on them, but I couldn't do that for my video because otherwise this thing would go on for an enormously long time. But without further delay, let's get started. Coming in at number 11 is Batman and Robin. Not terribly surprisingly, for good reason. This movie has a terrible reputation and people hate it. But I gotta say, I probably find more enjoyment out of it than most people, simply because it's so wonderfully ill-conceived. It's such a bad idea for the movie on such a core level, and everything Joel Schumacher was trying to do with it, with all of his stylistic touches, are just bizarre. Because it's a campy, corny, childish live-action cartoon where there's nipples on the bat suit. And you just see that and you go, what? How do these two ideas go together? Why are we doing zoom-in close-up shots of Batman's butt at the beginning of the movie? It's so wonderfully ill-conceived that it's quite enjoyable to watch. Like, if you sit down and try and watch this by yourself, like, let's watch a movie. Not so great. But if you sit down with a group of friends that are funny and you watch this movie, there's so many things about it that make it actually quite enjoyable, whether it's like the rubber ice cubes that win, Arnold Schwarzenegger's so over-the-top one-liners. It's quite enjoyable of a bad movie. It is so bad it's good, both because of how poorly ill-conceived it is, as well as it's just so energetic and so over-the-top in its absurdities that it's very enjoyable to watch this when you're in the right mood, in the right setting, and, you know, pulling out the Bat credit card. So many things about this are so amusing because it's so far into bonker zone that it's quite enjoyable. But you are laughing at it. You're not laughing along with it. Even when you're laughing at the puns, you're laughing at the puns, not with the puns. It's not good, but it is an enjoyable, not good movie. I would give this a 5 out of 10. Coming in number 10 is Batman 1966. I really was hoping I was going to be able to rank this one higher, or give it a higher rating than I'm going to, but I actually have rewatched this a couple times over the last couple of years with my kids, and it's a movie that has like 3 or 4 sequences that are super memorable, super fun. The shark biting his leg with the shark repellent. There's one where they're fighting goons in the Batcave and they keep disappearing. Of course, the scene where Batman's running around with a bomb going, what are you gonna do with the bomb? Or that's actually not what the line is. But so like there's a bunch of sequences in it that are really enjoyable, but the movie as a cohesive whole just feels very choppy, as if they get a helicopter in it, and it feels as if they finally have the budget to fly this Bat helicopter. And so then we have this big long Bat helicopter sequence, but otherwise it's not a sequence that's particularly enjoyable or makes a lot of sense. And that's what the whole movie kind of feels like to me. A slightly higher budget version of the TV show, but not as coherent and cohesive as an episode of the TV show. And a plot that's not particularly compelling. It's just an excuse to bring all the characters together, show off some extra budget, do some things. And so I wanted to go higher with it. It still does have its charms though. There's a lot to enjoy in this movie, but it's quite flawed. There are quite a few things about it that just don't work for me. And certain scenes just go on way too long, and there's this whole date sequence with Batman in the middle that kind of keeps going on and on. So for that reason, I can't rate it very high. It's pretty low on my list, but I would still give it a 6 out of 10. It's a fun nostalgia fest for me that's just not a particularly great movie, or as great as I want to be in light of how important it kind of was to my childhood. Coming in at number 9 is Batman Forever. So this is the first movie in the series directed by Joel Schumacher, and it has the bat nipples, it has the camp, it has the cheesiness, but for some reason it seems to work a little bit better here. He's not so indulgent in his excesses. It doesn't feel nearly as much like everything is designed just to be a toy for kids, but at the same time, it does have a lot of that there. I remember when this one first came out, I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. The inclusion of Robin and making Robin not a kid, but old enough that he actually can beat people up, and so that kind of works. It's not like I was crazy about Chris O'Donnell, but the way the character's handled and when he beats people, it actually looks pretty cool when he's fighting and has a slightly different, more athletic fighting style to him. So I liked that about it. This was at the peak of Jim Carrey, so Jim Carrey being in it provided a lot of fun at the time. But as I've rewatched it more recently, and I watched it, I believe about 6 months ago, the story to it's actually quite choppy. And it's known that there was a whole subplot digging deeper into the part where they start messing with Bruce Wayne's mind, and I think he forgets some things, and you can feel that there's things missing, and it gets clunky as it goes through the story. And so it doesn't really work, but it's quite a fun ride to go through it. It's not one that I like to rewatch a lot. It doesn't have a lot of, doesn't hit me emotionally like some of the ones higher on the list do, but it's an enjoyable enough fun ride that doesn't have quite so many of the excesses of Joel Schumacher's second outing with Batman. I'm going to give this one a 6.5 out of 10. Before we continue, I want to talk about something called MoviePass. MoviePass is the way I go and see movies. Essentially, the way it works is I pay $45 each month. They send me a card in the mail, and whenever I want to go to a movie, I pull out an app and I pick the movie I want to go see. It puts the money on the credit card. I go to the movie, swipe it, and it's covered. There's a couple catches with this. You can only see one movie per day, and the second one is that you can only see any given movie one time. But with all that said, if you see more than 4 movies per month, with the cost of tickets these days, with the cost of $45 per month, if you see 5 movies per month, it already covers itself, and so it's a great deal. Now, if you only go see 2 movies a month, ignore everything I'm saying, but if you see enough movies, it's a great deal. I highly encourage it. I've had a great experience. The customer service with them is great. So if you see 5 or more movies a month, go and check it out. If you can see the link down below, it does help out my channel if you subscribe to it using that link. With all that said, let's get back to Batman. Coming in at number 8 is Batman Returns. This is the second movie directed by Tim Burton, and while the first one is very Tim Burton-esque, this one is all out Tim Burton. This is really much more a Tim Burton superhero movie than it is a Batman movie. There's a lot of things here where the characterization of Batman is not right. There's a certain darkness that fits very much into Tim Burton's style of things, but it's also, there's a lot of really cool things in here. But if I'm reviewing this list and ranking it as a list of Batman movies and how much I do enjoy watching them, this isn't what I enjoy going back to very often. It seems so dark. There's a certain sense of heroism that's lacking in it. But it's weird to say all this because this movie was such a huge part of my childhood that I would feel like I like my gut tells me I gotta rank this one higher. I gotta enjoy it more than I actually do, but I don't. But like, so I've got the full set of the cards, trading cards from when the movie came out. We collected all of them, all here right in order. And so this huge part of my childhood. But at the same time, whenever I go back to rewatch it, it's good enough. I enjoy it, but it's so dark and twisted. I don't get those kind of moments of feeling of heroism that I want from a Batman movie. Instead of just, you're more captivated by all these other characters. Even like Max Schreck is more captivating than Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne's just kind of along for the ride, it seems like, in so much of the movie. And so I really want to rank it higher. I can't, because it's a movie that I don't enjoy enough as an adult to actually do that. And it's a real shame because, you know, of course, Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman just gives this great performance, this kind of really does tear your heart out. And then likewise, the tragedy with Oswald Cobblepot in this movie, just captivating. But the story itself and the way all the pieces fit together is just really dark and not really what I want it to be. I'm going to give this one a 7 out of 10. Coming in at number 7 is Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. Now, for me, this movie had a lot more to enjoy in it, especially if you watch it for Batman, than a lot of other people found it to have. Now, I'm not going to deny any of the problems in the story and the weird Martha moment. A lot of that stuff, I'm totally in agreement with you. I'm not crazy about Lex Luthor, but I don't hate him as much as other people. But there's a lot of things in here to enjoy. Some of my favorite Batman fighting moments. Actually, my favorite Batman fighting sequence of all movies out there is the warehouse sequence. Some great Bruce and Alfred moments of them talking about life and contemplating stuff. I think all that stuff works really nicely. And so there's a lot of things that make me enjoy the movie, and especially given the nature of this ranking, get a grade a little bit on the curve and move it up a little bit. And as I was thinking, would I rather sit down and rewatch Batman Returns or Batman v Superman? I'd rather watch Batman v Superman. Would I rather watch Dawn of Justice or Batman 66 certainly would go Dawn of Justice. And so for those reasons, kind of being a little bit more generous to it, but I really do enjoy this movie a good bit. I just wish it didn't have some of the enormous flaws that it does have, and we said and spoiled some of the stuff they did in the trailer. But Ben Affleck in the role, where they went with it and kind of the character moments with Alfred and the actual physicality of the character work really nicely. Now, I really wish they hadn't put machine guns on the Batmobile and had him throwing cars around and killing people and making him a bit of a sociopath, but you remove those out of it. There's a lot to really enjoy here. Really cool stuff that you can see that when you take it out of Zack Snyder's hand, who doesn't like heroism, he doesn't like heroes, and you put it in the hands of someone that does, you can see how this version of Batman with Ben Affleck could be really awesome. And you get hints of that I can just sit down, watch this movie, enjoy those elements of it, and compartmentalize all the crap into its own secret spot that I'll just ignore while getting pumped about all the stuff over here that's quite good. Well, with all that said, I'd give this one a 7 out of 10 on the Batman scale. From here out on the list, these are all movies I really like. My top 6 are all movies that I thoroughly enjoyed, had a great time watching, have a great time rewatching, and as I'm picking which one is where, I'm nitpicking little details. These are all really great movies that I thoroughly enjoy. I just gotta rank them somehow and give different scores to them to validate that. But these are all really enjoyable movies. Coming in number 6 is The Dark Knight Rises. The third and final movie in Nolan's trilogy has a lot of really great things in it, and it's such an ambitious movie. Like, as I was watching it the first time, I was thinking to myself, like, I can't think of a lot of movies that have this kind of scope and grandeur to the storytelling and kind of the way, like lots of movies cover large scale amounts of time, but they don't cover it the way this one does in a manner that just had something to it that was really special, but at the same time, it felt like they did have to cut some corners to make all of that work, to have this big epic scale. They had to cut corners to make things work, to be able to do things that didn't quite fully make sense. And so as a movie on first watching, really pulled on my emotions in a lot of the right places, hit a lot of the right spots, while at the same time I had kind of this off feeling about certain aspects to the movie. And then like that final several minutes of it was really powerful for me watching it the first time, but at the same time it was a movie that when I reflected back on it, some of the holes hit. When I watched the Honest trailer for it, I went, yeah, I can't defend some of that, and it does make me go, there's some problems here that I can't ignore now that really do bother me. They cut corners to be able to tell the story they wanted to tell, to be able to pull the emotions that they wanted to pull. They cheated a little bit to be able to do that. I mean, the most obvious one is if they show Batman flying out to sea really far away, and then 5 seconds later they show the Batwing blow up. And then a few minutes later in the movie, we say, no, he made it, he survived. You cheated. You cheated when you did that. He did not, you can't actually do that. That is cheating. You edited it in such a way that it clearly indicated that there was 5 seconds till the bomb went off, and that he's like, I'm done with life, and then you showed that he didn't die. Like, you can't do that. And throughout the whole movie, there's things like this where they cheat a little bit, but at the same time, there's so many things that are really good and good emotions, and a bunch of things really work. So it's such a back and forth for me. I thoroughly enjoy the movie, just not as much as I want to, and I can't like it as much to a level that lives up to the ambition of the movie. The movie's so ambitious and so much of what it's trying to do, I just can't get up there with it because there's some of these flaws, because Batman is not Batman, and then he becomes Batman, and then he stops being Batman, and he becomes Batman again just to stop being Batman. Some of that stuff, I gotta knock it, but I really do thoroughly enjoy this movie. I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10, but its peaks are really high, just its lows get pretty low, but 8 out of 10, I thoroughly enjoy this movie. Coming in at number 5 is this year's The Lego Batman Movie. So this is one I wasn't quite sure what to make of it, based off of this little part in the Lego Movie. What are you going to do with making a movie out of that? And then I went to go see it, and it's such a fascinating take on Batman. Like, it gets Batman, it gets some of the insecurities and the psychology of Batman while being part of the insane Lego universe with all the wackiness that goes along with it. And so that just is a really neat movie, kind of exploring very much Bruce Wayne's psyche, his character, why he does what he does, why does he push people away, why does he, and answering those questions in a kid's movie while having him fight Voldemort. And it's such this chaotic insanity to it that's so much fun, while at the same time having a lot of emotional depth to it that normally you don't find in a kids movie like this. With all that said, the hyperkinetic nature of the Lego movies is a bit much for me. That's not something I can rewatch a lot. And it kind of holds me back from like going all out 9s and 10s and stuff on these movies. But they're just such unique cinematic experiences that I'm glad that they came up with this style of storytelling, the hyperkinetic stuff that might not be for me, but I'm glad that it exists, that they made this movie, and that we get a Batman movie that actually is a Batman movie in this universe that has all the insanity of it with all the nature or actual understanding of Batman. I mean, when you think about like, you know, where Tim Burton movies have Batman putting bombs on goons and blowing them up, and Zack Snyder has Batman with machine guns mowing people down, it's interesting to think that the Lego Batman movie seems to understand Batman a good bit more than some of the people that were given $200 million to make a Batman movie. With all that said, I'm going to give this an 8.5 out of 10. It's a fun times for adults, for children, with a lot of depth to it. Coming in at number 4 is Batman 1989. This is kind of the first movie I remember seeing in the theaters. First movie I remember being excited about, and like with Batman Returns, I've got all of the trading cards for it, a full set. And this was a movie that very much kind of defined my childhood, made me fall in love with movies. This movie was huge for me, and there's a lot of really great things in it. It made me love Michael Keaton, who now, you know, he's on his curtain gigantic comeback, and this is kind of the place for me where I went, this guy's awesome. I love this guy. I want to see him in more stuff all the time. And then the Joker in this one, like kind of stealing the show, but I like some people say he overshadows Batman. I don't agree with that, but the idea that we just have this great villain, that would be the problem we have. We're watching a Batman movie with Michael Keaton as a great Batman, but we're going, maybe the Joker's better in this. That seems like a good situation to have, especially in light of, you know, we talk about Marvel movies in the MCU and how many of them have really weak villains. Here's a movie right here with a captivating villain, with a captivating origin, who's stealing the scenes, who's not being out like Batman is great in this one. Very captivating. With that said, this is a movie that feels exactly like its time. This movie would not have been made 5 years after. It would have been made 5 years before. It couldn't be made now. It is very much a movie of 1989. And you watch through it now, and it's kind of weird when the Joker is dancing to Prince in an art museum. It's weird. It feels out of place, and you're like, what am I watching now? And there's several Prince songs that play throughout the movie. Now, I had the cassette tape. I listened to these Prince songs all the time. Like, my early exposure to Prince up until like age 15 was this soundtrack that I listened to over and over again with a bunch of Prince songs on it, where my mom was like, you can't listen to this song. This is not, this is my childhood. But like, there's things in it like that are dated. They feel out of place. You can tell where they were still figuring out how to do the comic book genre. And so there's things about it that are very dated. If you watch it now, if you were born like in the mid-90s or later, it feels like this ancient bizarro world thing that exists in the mind of Tim Burton. So there's things that date it. For that reason, I knock it back more than I really want to. Much like Batman 66, except much better than Batman 66. I'm going to give this one 8.9 out of 10. I wish it could have made the top 3, but because there's some of the stuff that just feels dated about it, I could not go all the way there. Sorry for the quick interruption, but if you're enjoying this video, I wanted to give you a couple ideas on how you can support this channel. First off, subscribe, the obvious one. If you enjoyed this content and want to see more of it, click that subscribe button. Second thing you do, if you like this video, click that share button, share it on social media, share it on Facebook, make posters about it, plaster it all over your schools. You'll get in trouble, but hey, it'll be good for the channel. The third thing you can do to support this channel, if you can, please consider supporting me on my Patreon account. This is a way that you can actually crowdfund my channel. And for my Patreon subscribers, I let them kind of tell me a video they want to make each month. So if there's like a ranking video you want to do, support me on Patreon, tell me what you want me to do, and I can make the video for you. With all that said, let's get back to Batman. Coming in at number 3 is Batman Mask of the Phantasm. So this one actually did get a proper theatrical release. It was marketed, released, and it only made $6 million, which would be like $12 million today. So nothing at all in the scheme of things. So like, I was an enormous fan of Batman the Animated Series back then, and still too today. I watched an episode a couple days ago. And this movie is just like the perfect extension of the show, where they could do more with it and tell a more grandiose story. And so if you haven't seen it, essentially it's a Batman kind of exploring this character named the Phantasm, who's killing mobsters in Gotham. And in doing so, it also starts using flashbacks to retell kind of Batman year one and how he became Batman. How did he decide to like fully commit to all of this? And it shows him at a period of time where he's kind of doubting, do I need to do this? Because he's finding happiness. He's not as angry as he was before. And kind of how does he become this Batman that commits for life to battling crime so that no one would feel this pain again while telling this story about the Phantasm? And in and of itself, all of this, it understands Batman, it understands his psychology while telling a good Batman story. And one of the things that's neat about it is the main villain is a new villain. They made a new character where almost everything else just focuses in on pre-established Batman villains. Here's a solid Batman movie with a new villain. And the Joker ties into it, and Joker makes appearances, but it's a new villain at the core of it that does a great job and that helps us see another side of Batman that fits perfectly in with who he is. So if you haven't seen this one, and based off how much money it's made, you might not have, check this one out. It's a very cool movie. It's nice and short, so it doesn't have the scale ambition to maybe make it higher up on my list. But if this was like a properly theatrical, if they did this live action with a $200 million budget, this would be an phenomenal, incredible piece of cinema if they worked this whole thing out. I'm gonna give this one a 9 out of 10. This is a cool movie. Coming in number 2 is Batman Begins. My mind was racing back and forth. Is this going to be number 1? Is this going to be number 2? Last minute, this one came in at number 2. I bet you can guess what number 1 is, but I love this movie. I love origin stories, and this is a very cool telling of the Batman origin story. And really, the Batman origin story's never been concisely told like this before, because you got like Batman Year One that tells his first year as Batman when he's back in Gotham, but some of the training stuff, there's not like the story that you'll read this comic book. It's got kind of all these elements kind of pulled together. This movie's kind of the place where that happened. It's done so well. It kind of makes us think that we've seen his origin a bunch of stuff. Now, of course, we've seen the alley and the shooting of his parents a bunch of times, but the training and the transition from rich boy to guy in bat suit, we have not seen that a bunch of times before, and this movie tells a really cool version of that story. You know, I love the use of Ra's al Ghul to tell the story as a framing device, as a key element in this Nolan universe that's more grounded, that doesn't have superpowers, and so this character works really nicely to tell that kind of story. And just, I mean, it's a movie that the casting is so good. It's like you look at it and go, other than Katie Holmes, this is a perfectly cast movie. And you just kind of go through it. And when Christian Bale was cast in this, he was very well known to movie lovers. He was known to the industry, but he was not an A-lister at all before this. This is not a guy that you think Christian Bale, you think this big A-lister, biggest star of our times. That was not who he was when he was cast. They cast someone that was kind of someone you go, oh yeah, that he was like the racist in Shaft. Wait, wasn't he in like Reign of Fire? Oh, I saw Equilibrium a few years ago. But all of them kind of lower things, smaller roles for him. And then he pops up in this, shoots him to the A-list for good reason, because he's Christian Bale and he's a great actor that fully commits to these roles. But then you go through it with Michael Caine as Alfred, Gary Oldman as Commissioner Gordon, Lucius Fox with Morgan Freeman, like Rutger Hauer is the evil business guy, like all these things. Liam Neeson, the namesake for my child, as Ra's al Ghul, like all these pieces are such good actors for all of these roles that it just makes for such a good movie. And when I was deciding which one kind of goes on top, I was going in my head, I love the origin story of this one. That is so powerful. That type of thing is, I just love that stuff. But then the actual final third act, the plot line of the evil scheme feels a little bit tacked on. It feels kind of like the template of a Marvel movie where you have the first act is an origin story, the second act is trying to figure things out, and then third act, oh, we've got an evil scheme that shows up that Batman has to stop. That's what all the Marvel movies feel a little bit like, and that's what this movie feels a little bit like. For that reason, I brought it down, because our number 1 movie that we'll get to in just a second is a little bit better. For that reason, I'll give this a 9.3 out of 10. This is a great movie, just with that slight flaw of the structure and that third act feeling, kind of like, we gotta have a third act, here we go. But coming in at number 1 is The Dark Knight. There's a reason that this movie is widely acclaimed as the best superhero movie of all time. There's a reason that Heath Ledger won an Oscar after his death for his role in this movie. This movie is something special. It commits to being what it is, and that is a grounded take on Batman that's a crime drama thriller with some action in it. And so while the third act does have spectacle in it, it's much more the psychology psychology of situations, and it's, Batman beats up some guys in a scale, but it's not like buildings are exploding left and right and he's flying all around because we got to have a big spectacle because it's a big Batman movie. No, it's a crime thriller, so there's hostages being held and Batman has to save the hostages. In a certain sense, it feels small scale, but in the scheme of the movie, it feels large scale because they built tension throughout the movie of there's this character of the Joker that's insane that will kill people, is killing people. Batman can't stop him and he keeps doing more and more. So the whole city feels in danger. As you're watching the movie, you feel a tension. No one is safe throughout the whole thing. So even though in the finale of the movie, it's not, you think about all of the current comic book movies that have come out over the last several years with sky beams shooting into the sky and clouds of garbage over cities and explosions and cosmic battles. And then this one, there's people on a boat and there's people in a building. Small scale compared to those ones, but it's so much better because the tension has been built throughout the movie. The cast is great. The acting is great. The scenarios are great. And it's legitimate tension being built as you see the values of different characters being pulled back and forth. And even kind of in the psychology of this Bruce Wayne, that's this really kind of a Nolan creation that's his take on Batman. You see his thinking as he's trying to do the right thing but doesn't want to be stuck in this life and battling back and forth and what that means, seeing the consequences of his actions, seeing the escalation. All of this makes for good drama, good storytelling, good character moments. And this is a really special kind of movie. As I've said before, there's a reason it's beloved. There's a reason that people point to it as a special movie. Because it is. It's a type of storytelling that you don't normally get to see in movies like this, and it's very rare that a studio would trust a superhero movie to be this kind of story. Kind of story that you even think about it, it's not like big crime thrillers have been this big genre for the last 15 years or this huge thing when it came out. No, there was a guy that loved movies like Heat and was telling a Batman story and was like, I think these two can go together really well. And they did. And just even some of the beautiful shots in it, the way it's filmed and that segments of it were shot in IMAX and how they were, it just looked gorgeous. It's a really special movie. I'm going to give this a 9.5 out of 10. It, to me, is the best Batman movie of all time. Even if it's in its own contained Nolanverse, it is a very cool piece of cinema. It is #1 on my list. But that's just my list. How about your list? Tell me what you think down in the comment section down below. I would love to hear your thoughts. And as I said before, throw in all of those other animated ones if you want to. If you're just making a list of other stuff, you can throw it in there. I have to talk about it, and already this video file is, it's 37 minutes long in my raw, unedited one. So for all those reasons, throw it down below. I've seen a lot of them. I would love to talk with you about them. Tell me your thoughts on it, but I don't want to just talk about Batman. I want to talk about Batman with you. If you're new to my channel, please consider clicking that subscribe button. I do movie reviews, ranking videos like this one, trailer reactions, talk about a little bit of TV from time to time. And I got this thing called Masters of Movie Trivia where me and some other YouTubers compete in movie trivia to decide who the master of movie trivia is. We put a new episode out a couple days ago, and we got another episode coming out in just a few days, so go check those out. They're a lot of fun if you like trivia. And as always, thank you for watching.